Okay, perfect. Oh no. Hey everyone, my name is Yahshi Selassie and I'm 18 years young. I was born and raised in Oakland, California to entrepreneur parents, and I founded my business Yahshi Bakes in 2015. I've been baking for as long as I can remember, but began taking it seriously when I was 7. I'm super excited to show you some of my staple recipes in this chapter 1, the basics. Today I will be showing you how to make my smoky salted caramel. Growing up, I messed up caramel countless times. I used to crystallize it, burn it, didn't cook it long enough, added too much butter, and everything in between. I finally learned how to make the best caramel, and I've been making this recipe for over 6 years. People have tasted this caramel on my chocolate salted caramel cupcakes and in other recipes, and this is the first time I've ever shared it with you all. Before we get started, I want to show you some tips and tricks about how to measure. I'm going to show you with flour. This is all-purpose flour, which is important to note because some flour, say if it's buckwheat flour or tapioca, everything has a different weight and it has a different protein content too. Anyhow, if I'm weighing flour with grams, which is my favorite way to do it, it doesn't matter if I just scoop from here and just place it in here. But if I'm weighing flour, if I'm not weighing the flour, then I want to aerate the flour like this, and then you can gently scoop. You can scoop with another cup, but I prefer to do it like this. Take a straight edge and you're going to just level it off. And when it's level, you know that this is the same every time. So now I'm going to place the bowl on the scale, put it to 0, and that's about 35 grams, which I know is about right because it's 1/4 cup and I have some of that chart memorized. Anyways, if you like to bake, I recommend that you get a scale. They're probably less than $20 and that they will definitely make it easier to have your recipes turn out consistently each time. Okay, so before you even bring the caramel to the stove, it's important that you do all of the mixing while the sugar is not on the heat. Because when the sugar and water are on the heat, they can get agitated by anything you add and that will form sugar crystals and then you won't have a smooth caramel. So in this pot, use the largest pot that you have. I'm adding 2 cups of sugar. I'm gonna put this on the scale and put it to grams. I'm adding 113 grams or 1/2 cup of water. And with grams, it's nice because if you go a few grams over, it's actually not that significant, so you can see how much it is. But it's important to be accurate, but you can't throw it off that much if it's like 5 grams different. Okay, now that I have the sugar and water in here, I'm going to stir this until it's fully combined before I bring it to the stove. And if there's any sugar crystals already, if there's sugar already on the sides, you want to just get a spatula and scrape that down so it doesn't crystallize. And this is where I add in my candy thermometer, and this is important because you can get the same consistent temperature each time. So I know that every time I make this caramel, I cook it to 340 degrees. If I was just gauging it by eye, I wouldn't be able to tell if it reached the temperature. So some thermometers you'll see you can put it in when it's closer to the temperature, but this one I leave in the entire time. All right, now let's bring it over to the stove. So now I'm going to cook the caramel over medium-high heat until it reaches 340 degrees Fahrenheit. And as it cooks, I'm going to gently swirl the pan just so that it gets brown evenly. And another tip that I have is taking a pastry brush and some water, and anytime, like the sugar hasn't really heated up yet, but you can just brush across the sides and this will prevent sugar crystals from forming. That's probably the biggest step in caramel because you want it to be smooth, and once it crystallizes, there's really not much you can do. Okay, so right now the caramel is starting to smoke and the color is changing. You can see that smoke coming off of there, and it's definitely getting more golden and amber. And when I smell it, it's not burned because I know that it's light enough that it's not burned, but it's important to cook it enough because then you really get that caramel flavor and that smokiness instead of it just being sweet. So it's a multi-dimensional flavor instead of being monotoned. Okay, So it's very smoky in here. This is very dangerous. I'm taking the candy thermometer, I'm putting it in this water so that it doesn't stick. And now things get fast, things get really fast. So I'm gonna very carefully string the heavy cream in here. And it's gonna bubble a lot, but I'm gonna whisk continuously. Okay, perfect. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just set off the smoke alarm, which I don't do at home, but it happens. Anyways, if the caramel looks like it's smoking before it reaches temperature, then you should turn off the stove. Okay, but right now I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, whisk that in. I'm gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of sea salt. You can do more if you would like. I just think you need enough salt so you really taste it. This is sticking, but get that in there. And then we're going to finish with about 6 tablespoons of butter. This will make it glossy and it also helps it to thicken when it's cooled. Don't be alarmed if the caramel looks really thin right now. When it cools fully, it will definitely thicken. This also cools down the temperature slightly, not that much because it's very hot, but it will help. And once it's fully melted, once the butter is melted, I let the caramel cool fully in the pot before transferring, because if you transfer it to like a glass jar right now, the jar will definitely crack. So that's not a good idea. Okay, so now I'm just going to let the caramel fully cool. The butter has melted. You can't really tell what the texture looks like right now, but when it's finished, it will have thickened significantly and it will be great to put on ice cream, cakes. There's a lot of things you can use caramel for. So anyhow, let this cool. I'm gonna let it cool for maybe up to 40 minutes because it has to be fully cool to really thicken, and then you can safely transfer it to a container or a jar. I have to be honest, it hasn't turned out like this anytime recently, but you know, it would be the day that I'm filming. So normally it's a little bit thicker, but it's okay because I can still use this and it still has the flavor that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna pour some of it into this container, which is too small, but what I typically do is I'm normally making, when I make cupcakes, I put the caramel drizzle on top, and so it's nice to have it in this jar as well. You ready? Probably the directions I'm going to give you are a little bit off, but I've found that caramel can actually keep for a very long time as long as it's in an airtight container. So in the fridge for 6 months, it will actually keep. You just have to take it out before you use it so that it gets to room temperature, and maybe you have to re-melt it down, but because it has sugar in there, it's a natural preservative. So you can use this on anything you like, and then you just have caramel at the house all the time. Thank you so much for joining me in today's class where you learned how to make salted caramel. Some upcoming videos include learning how to make vanilla pastry cream, dark chocolate salted brownies, brown butter chocolate chunk cookies, and so much more. In this chapter, it's all about the basics, so this might not be a recipe that you use on your own, but you can feature it in other recipes like a cake, you can put it in frosting. These are all recipes that can be used and have many different variations. I'm so excited that you joined me in today's class, and I look forward to sharing more tips and tricks soon.